Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another refreshing day. I have some information to pass out. Please pass one to one another. We have a few topics to discuss this afternoon. Please take a look at each topic. And I would like a nice debate that will occur with each topic. But one thing you can't do is discuss President Trump. So, take a look at these, debate with one another, and do not, I repeat, do not discuss President Trump. Thank you. Enjoy.
Should we discuss topic 1 and then move on to topic 2?
Sure.
I think that's probably fair.
Okay, yeah, that'd be
Okay.
a good idea.
Yeah. I think it's essentially right. It's essentially right, but both sides seem to disagree about what justice entails, and I think that's pretty much always a matter of scale. How long term you're looking at the cost-benefit analysis.
If there's one phrase that I don't necessarily agree with, it would be sketching a utopia. I don't think any of us think we're going to build a utopia. I think we're going to try and work to create a more perfect union. But I think we all know that if there's 350 million of us, we're not all going to be happy.
Well, I don't know if defining utopia necessarily has to be a perfect world where.
That's what utopia
is.
means.
But I'm wondering if
literally
there's
what
kind
utopia
of-
means.
I'm wondering if there's kind of a different way of looking at it. A utopia in which it's understood that bad things like a balance of good and evil.
A more
Well, there
perfect
Maybe
union.
just-
Utopia,
I believe
really.
that with justice, we are trying to sketch a utopia. Maybe not that we all think that we can achieve a utopia, but that we are working towards one.
Yeah, and I mean, I think about it like in terms of sports. You did track. I mean, 4-minute mile was an impossibility
For a while.
until someone did it. And I think it's kind of like that where utopia, it's this target, it's this goal in the
Yeah.
future in the
Okay.
distance, and the likelihood we'll ever get there. It's kind of like the hyperboles. There's no certainty. There's no
It's-
absolute at all. But
It's kind of that idea
we can
you
move
shoot,
towards it.
you shoot for the moon and you miss and you're still amongst the stars.
Yeah.
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 I don't know how relevant it might turn out to be, but at least it's worth thinking about it.
Yeah.
For centuries, we've had people from different political backgrounds, especially writers, through novels, describe how almost every attempt that humankind could have at a utopia ends up as a dystopia. So maybe that's worth thinking about it as well.
Yeah, you got me there.
Yeah, regulating things to death is always the death of freedom.
Or the other way
To an
around too. I mean, you
extreme.
can make the case for the opposite as well, because the basis of conservatism suggests that if we just let things be, they will turn out to be the way they're meant to be, and that's somehow assuming that things are meant to be good.
That sounds like anarchy to me, not like conservatism.
Well,
I have a question.
That's what most people would define modern conservatism, or at least economic conservatism to be.
What
So
what do we think in each party is the idea of justice?
Free market.
Okay, for what side?
Free market
That's
and small
definitely-
government is conservatism.
Yeah.
So how do you propose? I guess
That's
whenever
purely
I hear the
economic,
concept
though.
of free market,
Yeah.
I think that's in a way also utopian principle on the conservative side in terms of, I appreciate that I don't have lead in my water. I appreciate that companies can't intentionally try to kill me.
How do you feel about having fluoride in your water as it's a neurotoxin?
Oh,
Yeah, I don't like it
that's
either.
Well,
up for
that
debate.
But
Or
you
like
know.
Flint, Michigan, who still has lead in their water.
yeah.
I mean, if you look at you'd be so alarmed how many major cities probably have lead in their water.
Um,
Our water's not as clean as we think.
Well, yeah, and and lead is one of the worst neural metals in terms of the way that it
yeah.
causes damage, especially with children.
I'm not denying how serious
Yeah.
of an issue it is. I'm just saying you'd be surprised how widespread it is.
Yeah,
too.
and that goes to the regulation. It's because our rules, we have laws on the books about lead in the water, but they're not being enforced.
So why have them sometimes?
Well, sometimes it's not so much that they're not being enforced. It's sometimes that there is very minute letters in our legislature that is up to constant change, and that constant change gets called on by people who have more power than politicians, and that is rich people who pay for politicians.
Well, I mean, you brought up Flint. Isn't Flint a representation of governmental corruption?
What are you getting
You're,
at?
you're, you're
Yes.
What are
illustrating
you
my
getting
point.
at? What are you getting at? By
Well, Flint, Michigan isn't an argument for regulation because the problem started with regulators.
I mean,
Well, yeah,
what's
but
the
that's
point
the
of-
argument a lot of conservatives make is that why don't we just enforce the laws that are on the book? Okay, I'm agreeing with you on that. So I'm kind of gonna go on a little tangent here. It seems to me, looking at these different items here, it seems like we start out stating a grievance, and I honestly, a lot of times we agree on a grievance on either side of the aisle. I think most people agree that the current system isn't really working for them all the way, and the problem is that when we get into that next level, which I would say is describing ideals or sketching a utopia, we kind of differ there in terms of what that ideal or that utopia is, and I don't think we don't have all the answers, but what happens is we have different ideas of what an ideal or utopia is, and whichever party it is begins the process of advancing some policy to try to hit the mark that they're targeting, either a completely free market. I don't really know anyone who wants an authoritarian control over them, at least in this room. There are those people in our country, but I don't see that from the crowd here.
I understand that because it's like you said, there are different ideas of what a utopia is.
Yeah.
If you ask an uber conservative person, Christian, what utopia for them would be, most likely would be a place where there is a free market, where they can work for what they have, and where everybody follows the same religion almost.
Yeah.
Because that isn't the basis of the religion itself. I mean, I was part of it,
Yeah.
so I would know. But then if you ask a person of a more liberal background what their idea of a utopia is, for everybody to have the government working for them so that they have less stress on their shoulders about the daily, more than and having their tax dollars actually mean something for them for things that they actually need on a daily basis. But also, it would also mean that they would want people to practice whatever faith they want and any kind of freedoms, which immediately just kind of goes against the type of utopia that a person from a more conservative background would want.
Yeah.
So the idea that we are sketching a utopia, I think that maybe some people have that in their mind. Hopefully not. I think if you're a more rational person, you know that this is nonsense.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Well,
I see
the
it as
very
the
first
collection.
sentence here says, and I think we need to enjoy the sentence for what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
Politics is an endless public disagreement about what justice requires.
Yes.
So in that first sentence, we can already deduce that there is no such thing as utopia.
Yeah. Well, this goes to one of the topics I've brought up before. Everybody thinks they're right. Everybody thinks they're right. Otherwise, they would never say anything. If you by any point you thought you were wrong on something, you would let people tell you what to do.
I really
Well-
genuinely disagree. I genuinely disagree that everyone thinks that they're right.
Tell me why. Tell me why.
Would
In
you
a way
say
that I would
something
explain it.
that
No,
you
tell
thought
me
was
why.
wrong?
Tell me why people don't always think they're right.
I think people who have open minds and enjoy discussion and leave their emotions to the side are the type of people who are willing to, they're the philosophers of the world. And I remember hearing this quote that philosophers would make the best king, but no philosopher wants to be king. And I think that those people do exist. There are people out there who genuinely want to grow and learn and understand.
I
Oh
agree.
yeah.
Yes,
but what,
Yeah.
what
but
do
why?
philosophers actually do
It's not because
for
it's
society?
right.
We're not
I
saying
agree
blind
with her.
faith. It's not
Then-
blind faith.
Do you still haven't answered the question? How you still
Totally
haven't?
good.
No, she didn't. Absolutely not.
I disagree.
But let me
Let's not
ask.
start talking over each other.
Sorry.
I still don't think you have answered the question. You said think that there are people who exist that are not like that, but you didn't explain me why you think there are people who exist that are not like that.
Yeah, philosophers
Like,
most
why?
definitely
Why?
think they're right.
Yeah, you think you
Everyone
absolutely
has
think
a
you're right
certain
about this right
certainty.
now.
Everyone's certain. in
I,
the
you know,
things they
I
believe.
read books sometimes, and actually, I'm
Well,
kind
we
of,
all do.
Well, sweetie, I'm going to ask your
We
question.
all
if you
do,
let me
yes.
answer. I do think that I think there are a lot of educated people out there who genuinely want the best for society, and it's not about ego. And I think those people have reached a different way of living, ego to the side.
I didn't say ego at
Yeah.
any point.
And
That
And
has
they
to do
think
with
that's
being right.
right for them.
Well, and
Not
I'm sorry
necessarily.
if the philosophers are the people who have found a way to live representatively of everyone else. Why aren't there lots of philosophers on the world stage? If they,
Yeah, right.
yeah,
Can I
just
answer
this,
that question
this is
for
not
you?
a
Can I answer the question?
please.
I think that our world, especially in the Western world, focuses heavily on boosting the ego. Our economy relies solely on materialism. And if people are constantly viewing ego, they're consuming ego, then there is no room for debate, because that's who we are.
It just seems like it's an almost impossible question to answer. That's why I constantly get
I don't
back
think
to
it is. I just don't think you want to understand.
Because by
No,
by
I
the
mean-
moment you open your mouth, you're already denying your very point.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
believe
that's
that
what
you're
So she's
what
not
you're
supposed
saying
to
is
talk
right.
because
not-
she.
The
Just
thing is,
because
like,
she
you
believes she's
shouldn't
right
talk
about
back.
this.
what happens is that when I say that everybody thinks they are right or believe they are right, whether they are willing to accept it or not,
Yeah.
is almost like saying there's gravity in the universe.
I kind of
It's
understand.
not something you debate. It's just sort of a fact you have to deal with.
Yeah,
But
We're
I
not
feel like
talking
you're
about
deciding
We're
that
not
it's a
talking
fact.
about
That's
Yeah.
not a
I
fact.
feel like
Yeah.
I feel like you're proving your point.
Yeah. But
But I
I
feel
am
like she
in
is
a-
not.
you're
inevitably-
proving the point that you're in
think
your
it's-
ego.
I think
no,
she's
I don't think
denying
it
the
has
point
nothing to do
without
with ego.
evidence
But look
or
how,
without.
with how much certainty you're willing to defend your point.
Both
Yeah,
of you.
you
Yes.
absolutely
Right
think
now,
you're right.
Kind of a,
You-
a little
You
bit
Can I-
absolutely
I think that
think
that's
you're
just
right,
a-
and you
I
thought you're right every
There's-
I
single
think
time.
that
There's
that
at some point.
I believe that that's a
maybe-
coincidence. I think that that's just a coincidence in the matter of the situation, is that she thinks she's right about this because she's trying to talk to you about this, but this does not reflect that every time she talks she
I
thinks
mean,
she's right.
At what
Let me
point
get to
did
that
you-
why
point. Let
would
me
you
get
choose
to that point.
What would you have
What
to
happens
say?
is that there are certain concepts that we can grasp
This is why.
our minds around that are not necessarily applicable to our reality. This is one of them. We can come up with an imaginary person that might not think that they're right.
They're just telling
But
saying
that,
things
but
for
what
a
happens
reason.
but what happens is that that person doesn't actually exist. By nature, by definition, it cannot actually exist. It's not something that
I'm
is.
sorry, but I know you're very passionate about this, and I would like
And you're
to talk.
going to
hold on.
disprove yourself again by
I would
just
like to
speaking.
talk without being interrupted or being spoken over, because I hate having to raise my voice to be heard. It sucks. So I think there's actually a lot of religions out there. Buddhism is the top one I can think of,
Uh-huh.
where a lot of people devote their lives to separating themselves from their ego.
Because they think that's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
The Dalai Lama thinks he's right.
The point that I'm trying to make,
Otherwise,
though,
he wouldn't lead anybody.
if
Yeah.
you don't
Right.
understand the ego, Like if you really
I
haven't
do.
researched
The
it.
thing, what
Hold
happens
on,
is that
hold
I'm
on.
willing,
Has nothing to
I'm
do
willing
with
to
it.
Let's let her
accept
speak.
it.
Let her get her piece out.
Yeah.
There's some there you've heard of everybody's heard of the word ego. Everybody knows what that word means. But there's only some people who've actually truly researched it and tried to understand it in a very deep, meaningful way. And you might understand it, but I'm just theorizing. I'm not telling you this is how it is. It's just kind of my theory.
You're a fan.
Your understanding of what the ego is and that possibility might only be in the surface of under the water, metaphorically speaking. But there's other people who might understand what the ego means in a bigger picture than you, theoretically.
And they think
Theoretically.
they're right.
I have a question.
And so
I
if
can
those
always-
people if those people exist, which could be possible, right? Is that a possibility?
Yeah,
Is it
everything
possible,
is possible in a
is it
quantum
possible that
world.
your shallow
Yes.
understanding
Yes.
of the ego and its role in human discussion and communication and discourse might not be fully developed?
Listen,
You're
so,
talking
alright,
about
I think
Carl
it-
Jung's research,
I think it-
much of which has been debunked.
I'm not
So,
talking
wait,
about
I-
dream interpretation.
I have
What
a
happens
question.
is that
I have a
And you
question for
just proved my right. You think you know because you're regurgitating a lot of information that you have, but do you truly
Yeah, he
understand?
thinks he's
I
right.
have
I
a
think
question.
I'm right,
I
and
have
you
a
think
question.
you're right.
I have a question. What about just the concept of playing devil's advocate proves you wrong right now?
The person who's
Some people
playing
don't
devil's
talk.
advocate is doing so with an objective to prove their point.
Not
No,
always.
that's what the
Well,
Socratic
and
method is.
sometimes-
The Socratic method is not I'm right, no I'm right, no I'm right, no I'm right. That's
But
not
the
it. That
Socratic-
defeats
No
the
one ever said
purpose.
that.
The Socratic method is
doesn't
this is
actually
what I
state anything.
think. Okay, I see what you're thinking, but
But no
it doesn't
one
make
said
sense because of this, and so I think this. Oh, okay, I see what
No,
you're
no, no,
thinking,
no,
so
no,
I
no,
think
that.
this.
Arguing the
That is,
opposite, though.
you are
But you're
confusing the
saying-
Socratic method with.
What you're saying though is I'm right. Negativity. What I'm saying is it's possible
What?
for someone
no,
to
no.
say
No,
this is how
You're
I feel.
misunderstanding.
This is-
Socrates
This is how I
thought he
feel.
was
She's
right
right
about
right
it.
now, though. She
You're
thinks she's
misunderstanding
right
what I'm
now.
saying.
She thinks she's right.
Justifies
know.
what
The
he's
thing
saying.
is-
Which
the
is
thing is-
why you're arguing.
In essence, everybody believes their own points. Everybody believes
Whether
what
it's
they
true or
say.
not, whether
it's
it's
true or
accurate,
not, whether it's accurate
they-
or not.
they
there's
believe they're
always
But
right.
there's only some people who are willing to put their please don't interrupt me when I say this. There are some people who are willing to put their ego to the side and be capable of admitting that maybe they're wrong, that maybe they didn't see something that they didn't see before.
Well,
but so many
obviously, that's
people are
called
like, no,
learning.
I'm right, you're wrong, and there's no holes in my
So that's
argument. It's not
ignorance.
possible. But I genuinely believe, and maybe I'm wrong, I genuinely believe that objectivity and being a devil's advocate is the kind of thing where you are able to admit, you know what? Maybe I am wrong. I love that you just pointed out that I'm wrong because now I can grow and now I can be better.
Yeah, but
In
before they
theory-
How
said
many
anything,
times
they
have
thought
you
they were right,
admitted
and
that
then
you
they
were
learned
wrong in
something
this
new.
class?
In theory, that is.
No, I would say she's
Possible,
admitted that she
but
was
it's-
wrong a couple of times, and she said, "Oh, okay, well, I get that, and here's this."
So she had a viewpoint that she thought was right.
And now she
She
has a
learned
different one.
something new,
And she's
and
fighting
now
it.
she has a different
Okay,
point of view
you know
that
what?
she
I
thinks
think
is
that
right.
what you
So
guys are saying,
you're always
I
gonna
think
think you're
it's.
right.
You'll
I
always,
think,
no matter what.
Hey,
otherwise,
let's hear what she
how
has
would
to
you
say.
argue a point?
You
if
never
didn't
would.
think you were right, or what kind of a statement?
It doesn't
I
mean
can't
that
even
it-
think of a
it doesn't
statement
mean
you
that
would
it-
make that
Why
you
are
don't
you so
actually
angry?
know
I
isn't
think that
right.
you guys. I think that
It's
what
just that
you're
it's a
saying.
fundamental
Let's-
truth.
So you're
I
saying
think-
like
Hey,
outside.
she's been trying to speak for a minute.
I think that your concept is correct until you go. Okay, so you're saying the part that you're saying about that you wouldn't say a point if you didn't think you were right. I completely. That's what I'm disagreeing with. The fact that people think they're right and they express that, of course. But for you to say that people don't say something that they don't believe they're right about is.
It
That- but
demonstrates.
no, okay, let me
But that's
let
called
me
playing
clarify
devil's
something.
advocate. Devil's advocacy has an objective.
Yes, absolutely.
You have a
That is
point
a
you're
You don't always
trying
have
to
a
prove
motive.
by
You're pulling
undermining
a hole.
another point.
That's
Yeah.
I think this is a
that's
kind
of
of
like
like
an
a-
egotistical way to
No, no,
look
no,
at
but-
playing
no,
the
that's
devil's
its
advocate.
You don't
function.
understand. No, no, no.
In fair enough terms.
What you don't
sometimes-
understand is the fact that playing the devil's advocate is a method that an interlocutor has in order to prove their point.
Right.
It's
Yes.
not. It's
Yeah.
not a
No.
way
If
to
you're
say,
arguing
I
for
be-
things
I
you
don't
don't
believe this.
believe in, what are
I
you
think
doing
that we're
with your
separating
time?
the
right?
egotistical.
We're here.
And
Just
it's
because-
different.
hold
It is
on,
different to
you've
play.
had a lot. You've had a lot.
But let me
Just
finish
because-
my
but
thought.
you- but-
Let me finish. I will let you say what you have
but
to
I
say.
just don't feel like that's gonna happen. But,
But-
go ahead.
I mean, this one was nice too. I'm
Can I-
It's not important. Say it.
Okay. I
Someone
think
gets
that
the floor.
you think that way. So you're assuming
Yes.
everyone else thinks that way.
And
But
what
what I'm
I'm s-
telling you is there's different ways of thinking that you might not know about.
What
I'm
I'm
telling
saying.
you that I'm right.
what I'm
and
saying-
You're
you
wrong.
don't understand
Yes,
because I have a
yes.
point that I believe is right, and
Yes,
so your
absolutely.
viewpoint is different than mine. So you're right and you're right.
I
Both
think
of
you
you
can
think you're
only
right.
explain so much to someone as they're capable of understanding.
So explain the context where
So
someone
I believe it
someone
would be
would
time
not
to
believe
give
that
up
they're right.
explaining this to you guys.
I was
No,
gonna say we have
I-
several
so
prompts and we're on
Yeah.
the first sentence. of
Prompt
this
number
one.
2.
So maybe let's.
Mimisi.
Let's look at the
It's
second one.
I don't think we even talked about the first
You believe it or
I think
not.
we talked about
You know
it.
what I
though.
mean? It proves itself over and over.
I would
Whether
say-
you
Did
believe
we
it or
talk
not.
about the difference between what each side thinks that justice requires? Because we never said anything about that at all.
Oh, I think we.
Justice
That-
is about long term. What is better for everybody long term?
So what does your side think that justice requires?
think that's
not
right,
what
by the way.
justice
What a
is.
surprise.
Not what justice
Justice
is.
isn't personal. Justice is for everybody.
Not what justice is. I'm not asking you what justice is. I'm asking you, what do you think? Take what you think justice is out of it and tell me what you think justice requires. Tell me what you think it takes to achieve the justice that you believe in.
That's
Well,
such a
can
deep
you-
Justice
Can I tell you what I-
requires
Can you answer
people
that question
doing
yourself?
what they
Yeah, but I'm
believe
gonna
is
answer.
right
Just ask
Why are you being
and
so
fighting for it.
I'm
Just-
having a conversation.
Just
You
take
take
it
everything
down.
personal.
No, I
You're a
think
little
you just
Okay,
said
so
something.
you answer.
Yeah, for real.
I didn't
Take
hear
everything
you.
personal.
Justice.
Fragile cookie.
Justice is not personal, that's vengeance. Justice, I do believe, is about everybody, and that means as many people as possible, and it's never going to be everybody, fighting as hard as they can for what they believe is right.
I think justice is about harmony.
Yes.
I think
The one
if you
thing
wanna
that
put it
you-
in one word, you could say harmony.
The one
So-
thing that you said
Krista,
that I was
you
like,
ever notice how you get mad when people interrupt you?
you said yes, it's harmony. I heard you.
Okay, I guess.
I have one
I'm
question
bad.
about justice.
I did.
Is justice constant or ever changing?
Can we
I
let
would say
him
it's
say?
absolutely
Okay,
ever
go ahead.
changing.
Oh, yeah.
Look at you could look at ideas that were legal hundreds of years ago that changed. For a long time we thought slavery was just.
We're
Do you think-
stoning.
okay,
Clearly
does
not.
anyone
we
here
thought
think
that
that-
women didn't deserve.
Does
the
anyone
vote.
here think that there's an essence to justice that doesn't change, even though the shell of the justice and the applications of justice may be constantly changing? Does anyone think that there's an essence to justice that we could find through
Equality.
discussion that could apply through any generation, through any society, through any culture?
Seeking equality.
It makes.
But
I
some
think
people
equality-
think equality is not.
You need to define equality, though.
Well, no, but
about, like, a-
regardless of the definition, it's people seeking the same thing, whether they see it differently. Kind of like our picture with the swans and the duck. We all saw it differently, but
To answer your question, I don't think I could name a single thing that's going to be the thing that we all agree that murder and thieving and rape is bad. I don't know what's going to be the issue that sets me apart from my children. I don't know. Maybe I have
But-
one idea in my head that I'm cemented as just, and the tides of time will flip back and forth on something. I think there's like a few literal crimes that will always be viewed as heinous, but I don't think that justice itself is. I don't think there's going to be a single tenet of justice that carries.
well,
over.
in
Well,
context,
maybe we'll
because
end up-
murder
well,
is
maybe-
I
legal.
was going to
Let's
ask
say-
for some example. What kind of crimes do you think will always be seen or have always been seen as heinous?
Murder,
He said-
rape.
So-
Murder,
Very
murder.
said
Murder
that.
wasn't seen as
Murder
heinous
is-
among multiple cultures.
Well, and even
Oh,
today,
well,
and it
I
depends
mean,
on the nature
It
of
depends
the
on the
murder.
nature. I mean, we
Like
spend
murder-
more money on
murder's
murder
always-
than any
Well,
other
in
country.
your-
Within
in
their
your
own
culture.
citizens?
No, but
So there are exceptions.
but the thing is that's not a blanket concept though. It's not murder is universally wrong.
Okay.
Killing someone is universally
Yeah.
wrong. They didn't believe that.
What do you think?
Well, and
Yeah.
of course, and you
But then
got
we
you
can
got
argue
you
that-
got
Hey, let's see
killing.
what
No
Miss
culture
Baker has to
believes
say.
that.
Yeah,
Let's see what
hey,
Miss
all
Baker
right,
has to
Miss
say.
Baker hasn't
And
spoken.
that's
Hey,
just
guys,
me
Miss
saying
Baker's
that
talking.
isn't a blanket concept that
Right.
will
Yo,
universally
let the
apply.
lady
Right.
talk.
All right.
Please. What were you trying to say?
I was just gonna say, like one of the points you were saying is, something we've always regarded as wrong is killing other people. But if it's in the different concepts of war exists around that, and even if people don't agree with that, or you've got killing someone in self-defense, or just
Vengeance.
Well, this is why there's
I
different
don't like
degrees
it.
of murder. You know,
It-
murder has to be premeditated, and there has to be a motivation.
No, absolutely. But
War
you-
is completely
but
different.
It was just kind of
But that's
piggybacking
still
off what
murder.
you said about how
No,
like
it's not.
something
No,
we've
you're
always
killing
considered
someone.
as
There's a
wrong is
difference between
murder.
killing someone and murder.
So
And
what do you
that's
think it takes
bringing
to
justice
achieve
down to a
justice?
personal level, which is always going to be wrong.
What do you think it takes to achieve
To a point, we
justice?
still do it.
I
They're
think
just
it
gonna talk.
requires a lot of people playing devil's advocate. And you spoke that you're not playing devil's advocate unless you're arguing your point. I like to play devil's advocate amongst my colleagues and friends. I like to argue the opposite of what I think sometimes, to hear what my friends have to say,
So
to
do you
test
think
my own beliefs.
open-mindedness is
You have to
required
be
to
willing
achieve
to
justice?
test your beliefs, and you
Yeah.
have to be willing
Yeah.
to
Sometimes you
it's a good
arrive
one.
at justice not by your own will. Sometimes.
It's interesting that you said that
wait, there
your
might be a
definition
sense
of
of
playing devil's
justice.
advocate is purposely advocating something that you don't believe in. And I find that very interesting because I do consider myself a devil's advocate, and I never go, you know what, I don't believe in this, I'm going to fight for it. I don't think that way.
That's not what I was saying.
Okay, please
And
describe. Please say what you
I was saying sometimes, not all the times, I like to play devil's advocate so I could test my own ideas and see how they hold up and see what other people say. I like to see.
But
I
that's
like to say the
perfecting your
arguments.
argument.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But that's different, though.
Okay.
No, that's
No,
the perfect.
that- what is
We're gonna
it?
go back-
We're
we're
gonna
gonna
go
go
back
back
to
to
that.
actually
We're
be
gonna
go back to that conversation. I can feel it. We're gonna go back to that
Oh,
conversation.
no.
Hold on. Wait.
I'm louder than you.
Okay. Okay, I'm asking a question. I'm
She
asking
broke.
a question.
She's broken.
Oh,
It's
God.
broken.
Don't you
Yeah.
really
That's
help
what
me
it sounded
out?
like.
Waiting on it.
All right,
Come on, Victor.
So,
At some point, she was
so
gonna
we
break.
talked about what my side of the aisle kind of thinks of, or I like to think of myself as floating back and forth. But what would you guys say, the people that lean a little bit further left than I do? What would you say requires justice?
Justice?
Mm-hmm.
I think that to achieve justice, I think that there needs to be equality. I think that there needs to be an even playing field for everyone.
Due process for all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you're not going, if everyone isn't on an equal playing field, then you're not going to get to justice because someone's going to have the upper hand all the time, meddling and everything.
I think, if you don't mind me saying, and I thought about this after some of our past conversations, is we say we want these broad, theoretical, abstract concepts, and this is what we want, but we never actually take the time to define what these concepts and these theories are. For example, she says she wants equality. Well, here's the thing about that. Women are on their, periods 25% of their life.
Gross.
They have to carry, when they do carry a baby, it's for 9 months. It's recommended by physicians to breastfeed your baby for 1 year.
What does this have to do with
The
equality?
point I'm making is
we're
a
not
lot of
created equal?
women, a lot of people in our society today equate equality for females as having the same opportunities in the workforce, which in many ways we do, but because it's not balanced, as we can see tangibly, then there's this idea that it's not equal, but isn't it? Because women are biologically created in ways that men aren't, that is naturally going to inhibit our role
Right.
in the workforce. Is that equality or inequality?
So you know what I
So-
think? I think another part of that would be understanding.
Give men
Yeah.
periods.
I feel like if
No, thank you.
if there was also more understanding of the differences between people,
Once a
we
month.
could better receive equality. I mean, we could better achieve equality to better achieve justice.
So I see justice as kind of like a river that has both. There's the constants of a river. Like, there's rock, there's water, but, sometimes the water will have a heavier flow and that can erode so that it changes the direction of the river.
Phrasing.
And,
Heavy flow after the period. I'm sorry.
all right,
I
yeah.
had to.
Yeah, that was bad. So, and
Super
yeah,
cute.
there's the constants that we know.
He said a dirty word.
And I think that with regardless of your definition, regardless of how much water there is, we equality is kind of a major factor of justice in general. There are those things that'll change. Like
I'm sorry, I don't understand the metaphor, to be honest.
I know it's a little.
But
above your head,
I
get it.
kind of get it, and I had a follow-up question to what you're saying.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
And the question is also related to what I first asked is whether there was a constant injustice, if there is something that applies to everybody, if there's an essence to justice that we can find. Do you think that we will ever find a justice system that we will forever be happy with, or will it be always something that we will have to revise and constantly change? That's
Yes.
why
Yeah.
Some
Constantly
people will be
change.
happy with it
Certain
always,
presidents-
and
some
others
some
won't.
some people will be happy.
Who would
That's
those
what I
people
think.
be?
Some people will
Like
be happy for
whites who-
some play,
Older
some for some
people,
part of it.
You
Or
know,
people will be happy
slaves.
for other parts of it, for other time of it. And
Generation.
I,
Do you mean-
I actually think there might be a central tenet to justice now that we're talking. Objectivity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But-
wrote. I
especially-
actually-
especially-
I
could
wrote
you-
that down.
for my lack of understanding, would you mind developing on that thought?
Objectivity is going to involve removing the personal again and looking at a situation and recognizing harm and benefit. And harm is not just. So if you can be objective with somebody incurring harm on somebody else, you'll always recognize that that's not just.
That's a fair
No.
point,
Yeah.
but I have a question about that as well. Long time ago, we used to not allow legal abortions in this country, right? Maybe not too long ago. And through our courts, we will constantly have young women accused of committing abortions. And at the seat, at the judge seat, there would be a female judge that would have to make a decision of what their sentence would be. And being, what is the word that you use?
Objective.
Being objective, looking at the law and what the law stated and what we had defined to be just, they would have to send young women to prison
No, that's not right.
or serve different kinds of sentences depending on the state
I
that
don't
they
know
were.
how you got to that though.
Let me finish. They had to
You gotta
serve
listen.
some type of punishment
Why?
because that's what the law was.
Because
But
that's
the
what
law
laws
is
do.
separated from. Oh, you mean in the past?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
there you go.
Yeah,
Now
thank
we're-
you.
You gotta listen there. That's what he said.
Well,
and
since
so
we
and
saw-
so
Go ahead.
that we could call that
Objectivity.
Can
objectivity,
we
but at
look
the
up
same but at the
the
sa- but at the
first
same
woman
time
judge,
but at
please?
the same time
That's a good
Uh,
question.
wouldn't
I think
it
I
have
should know
been
that.
now as we hear this story, wouldn't it have been more just in our generation for that female judge to actually not remove herself from that and have compassion on somebody and be able to litigate in a way that would have been a little bit more compassionate to this woman and be able to put on a sentence that was the least harsh as possible
That's-
on that person?
That's nice.
Would it or not?
No,
I'm
hold
asking.
on,
I'm not
no,
saying.
I-
I'm asking.
yeah, I'd like to
I
answer
have an answer about objective justice as regards abortion, and you
could it
guys
be
can
some
run me over as soon as I'm done, but I'm not one of you people who believes in pro-choice. I do, however, recognize problems within our system where a girl who has not chosen this pregnancy is going to be severely harmed by it. I think our system, like the idea, I believe that a woman should carry that baby to term and that they should enter an adoption system that doesn't
Yeah, but-
lose people.
Yes, but
Okay,
that's
we're
but
not
that's what
talking about
no, no,
abortion.
no,
Let's
no,
get out of
okay, but that's
God.
getting away from the point. That's actually deciding
Lord
whether
have
abortion
it.
is good or not.
Nigga,
But
But
Well,
objectivity
yeah,
and whether
yeah,
abortion is good
Is
or not.
objectivity,
So
is
let him
objectivity
talk.
always let's put subjectivity at the stand right now and let's decide whether subjectivity is something that really applies throughout justice in any generation and in any culture at all.
So let
Do
him-
you believe that that is the case? Or sometimes should the personal wisdom of somebody be applied as well to apply this justice?
I think
I would like to answer the question you asked previously, real quick, regarding compassion in law. Unfortunately, judges aren't, when sentencing, afforded the right to think about compassion. They have to think about mandatory minimums. as in minimum sentences.
But that
Yeah.
not all have a mandatory minimum though.
A
so-
lot of crimes have specific mandatory. All crimes have specific mandatory minimums too, and
I mean, they might be fines, they might not be.
yeah, exactly. It's not necessarily jail time. It could be it could be volunteer service. It's a crime by crime basis. It's your first offense, your second offense, all those variables that fix into justice.
Okay. So let's use abortion, even though it's just a very small facet of our policies here in the United States. Let's take abortion and apply it to the final sentence of this paragraph, which states it's always important to ask in any particular case which function is being performed. So in regards to the Christian ideology that abortion is a sin and wanting to make it illegal, what function is being formed by doing that?
Hold
well,
on.
first
no,
of
no,
all-
no, no. The function
First
is
of all,
about protecting
Christianity
the
doesn't
child.
think that abortion is a sin. Christianity thinks that murder is a sin, and they categorize abortion as murder because
But
they
what-
believe
okay.
that conception is the moment where
Yeah.
life begins.
Thank you for-
So that's the technicality where a person who is a more liberal side and a person on a conservative Christian side differ.
I
It's in
appreciate
the
the
definition
clarific-
of where life begins.
Which is
I appreciate the
scientifically-
clarification. And going back to the question that I asked, what function is being
I would say
performed?
that function would be in the opposite direction of justice.
Why do you think that?
Well, you hate when I say this. I believe in individual liberty. I think it's somebody else's. It's not my body. If you're not hurting anyone else, and I don't believe that life starts at conception. So I don't think if you have an abortion, I don't think you're hurting anyone else. If you're not hurting anyone else,
It's
whatever you want.
an interesting thought, and I'm just going to ask questions just to be provocative here because is it fair to consider and say blanket statements like we found life in Mars because we found a bacteria in Mars, and to say, oh, the fetus in your body right now is not life because it hasn't hit 3 months?
there, in the legal terms of what's alive and not alive, this mostly pertains to people who are in comas. There's this thing called SBA, sufficient brain activity. In the
Right.
eyes of the law,
Yeah.
if you do not have sufficient brain activity, you are not alive, and that is
But
exactly
law is
what.
but law is subject to change.
Could you?
And
could
also,
you give
that
us-
is definitely true, but there's also
We
the
could change
difference
that term.
between single cell.
I think you're just
There's-
arguing for the sake of arguing. At this
Could
point.
you
No, no,
give
no,
us an
I'll-
example?
Can I please finish my point, please?
Yes.
Just
Yeah,
real
Yeah,
quick.
go ahead and finish.
Also, in regards to single cell bacterial life versus growing eventual human life, it's two different scientific concepts.
Right.
Well, if we
Could-
choose it to
could
be.
you
yes.
okay? Could you give us an example of functions so that people actually answer your question?
So I think the function of being anti-abortion is to limit murder in a perfect society.
Okay.
In their eyes, yeah.
So so the answer to the question would be: is it murder?
I would say absolutely not.
And once we have a
So then
judicial,
But
we have to
50% of the country is
Nobody
split.
understands.
Yeah.
Objectively speaking, it's the only issue
No,
in
no,
our
we
history
understand,
that
don't
we
worry.
have
I
been
don't
split
know,
on
nobody's answering
50-50
Maybe you don't
permanently.
I understand. Nobody's
Then
listening.
answer it.
Okay, that's okay. That wasn't even the point of what just happened. I'm saying nobody's understanding what people are asking, and they're just jumping to say something.
We
to
are.
my
We're
point.
moving out.
And to ask me and go, do you understand? You answer it then. That's
That's not the
totally
point.
not.
Yeah.
That's not the point.
We're here to learn. It's okay to have questions and to not have
But-
all the answers. Yeah.
Right.
The
but
conversation
but
doesn't have to go the way you
nobody's-
want it to go.
I'm
Sorry.
not. It's
Sorry.
not going the way I want it to go. I'm just giving people the respect of asking a question and us actually answering the question. The question that I asked earlier, nobody answered because everybody just went, and that's not even. I don't even care. I'm just saying in this particular. That's why I asked her to give an example of functions so that people actually were answering her question.
like take some time to digest it.
We
think
are,
about
and
it.
we're talking about it. Maybe you don't get it.
It's not that I don't
you know,
get it.
I don't. I
Yeah.
thought about it.
I
Yeah.
thought about it. We're talking about it.
Well, I think we
You're a
both.
couple.
Because I
pages
agree.
behind.
Sufficient. What is it? Sufficient brain function
More
is
activity.
activity. To me, I agree. And the problem is that there's always going to be a disagreement because scientifically, people will disagree on where that exact moment happened. Just like climate policy. There's a pretty overwhelming consensus in one way because it's the same thing. Like scientists who have studied it tend to all
go down that same.
And if it's
Oh,
brain
yeah.
activity, should we have a case-by-case system then? Because right now we have more of a numerical evaluation for when it's considered abortion legal or illegal. Because if it's brain activity, what will decide what life is, then every time a girl wants to have an abortion, then we would have to have a serious test that is very intrusive.
No.
Wait.
They know
If
the
we're
stages
using
of
sufficient-
babies in the womb. It's not like a secret.
Yeah, but it doesn't
Sufficient
happen
brain
fifth
activity.
day immediately.
Yes, it
But
does.
the
Case by
functions
case.
do not
Beautiful
start
process.
or stop at a
It
certain
has
truly is a
Sufficient
beautiful
brain
process.
activity is used as a benchmark in people with comas because once you hit a point of non-sufficient brain activity, you ain't coming back. You're
Exactly.
already dead. That doesn't apply to an ovum, to a fetus that is growing. That brain activity is going to get bigger, not smaller.
Can I make a statement?
Yeah,
So
true.
So so say a woman isn't allowed to have an abortion because they've said it's murder, you can't do it, but she was raped by her father and she was 13 years old.
Yeah.
You know whether she
Hold
was
on,
raped-
hold on.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So now she's carrying this child that she may not be able to take care of. She obviously doesn't have any family support, but she can't by law get rid of the baby. So she has to either raise the baby her own, which is going to hurt herself, it's going to hurt the economy. We have to think about the repercussions of the initial functions and start wondering if there's bigger functions that need to be considered.
And that's exactly why it's legal.
Yeah.
No.
To have
So here's my problem justice-wise with this is there is a party in this story that is never going to have a voice. And we're looking hold on, I'm trying to figure out the best way to describe this. Okay. My personal opinion of justice, because apparently I believe life begins at a different point than everybody else does, and it's sufficient brain activity. I don't think that argument is sound. The thing that I think would be just, number one, that 13-year-old girl should have never been raped, but in a world where she was, having sufficient care, that child having an adoption or a foster system that didn't deprive them of opportunities, those are things that I think people should argue for.
That's easy for you to say because you don't have to have your body go through an intense physical change and spend 9 months with something inside you that you didn't ask for.
And I'm going
Yeah, but
to
it's also-
say,
it's
I'm
also
going to
easy
say
to say
safety
that
of the
when you
mother
don't
is
get it-
actually a point I'm willing to concede.
And what about the
At least,
psychological
yeah, I
safety
gotta
of
give you
the
credit
mother?
for that.
Not just the physical.
Well, the psychological state of the mother isn't going to get better because she gets an abortion.
Yeah.
She's going to be scarred for life. She's going to be
You
scarred.
tell that to the next 18 years of my life minimum.
She's going to be scarred for life for being raped, no matter what.
You're
I
not
think
saying that it
that's
can
true.
improve at all by getting rid of the baby that what?
Listen. Listen, my best friend
Okay.
is a result of an abortion, and I've had the conversations
What?
way deeper than this. I mean, it's result of a rape.
But everybody deals with it different.
I agree with it.
Right, so you're saying that their mental state wouldn't get better from getting rid of the evil
I
thing
think
they're
that
holding
because
onto?
they were raped, their psychological state is going to be affected for the rest of their
Yeah,
life,
but
no
it
matter
couldn't
what.
get better.
It's not the solution.
Well,
to get rid
hold
of it.
on.
If you're looking
But
for a
if
solution
that-
for the
the
woman,
How do you know
benefit
it's not
better-
the solution to get rid of it?
Okay.
for many people it isn't.
Let's get a
But
little
for
bit
many
back
people it
to,
could be.
I think we all did a good job of
Maybe.
describing our
I don't know.
idea.
They'll never know.
Of abortion.
Yeah.
So
We'll
what's
never
the next
know.
thing?
Not
The people
just
who
that,
have
I
the
was gonna
abortion
say-
will never know.
I was gonna say I think
You'll never know.
No, they'll never know.
But
Let's
you'll
come
never
back to
know.
Earth. Let's come back to Earth for a second.
Okay, go ahead. I'm ready to move on.
I was about to say I think we both sides of the spectrum has done a good job defining what they think justice is. Should we move on to the next
Yeah.
piece of paper? Which honestly I think I might need some help with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mimesis.
The imitation or representation of aspects in the sensible world, especially human actions in literature and art.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Can
Imitation
you
or representation of aspects in the sensible world. So
Of the sensible world.
of the sensible world. So would you say that the aspects of the sensible world are a goal. Do you get what I'm saying? They're
Let's define sensible world first. What's the sensible
I would say
world?
just like good and
Why is
evil,
that
bad.
funny?
and
Wait,
good
before we
kind of
even
thing.
get there, could we, for my own sake, to help me better understand what I'm reading, could you seem to have grasped what they meant by the imitation of representation of aspects? Want to dumb it down for me?
So the imitation or representation, i.e. art, of aspects of the sensible world, which I would define as a spiritual person as being the divine, for lack of a better word, especially human actions, which goes back to Confucianism, which is this is Confucianism essentially. And then applying this kind of understanding to your relations to yourself and your role in society. So human actions of the divine would be Confucianism, treating people how you would want to be treated. Maybe does that help at all?
I
little
think
bit,
that
I
I
think.
think that it might be I think it might be a little bit darker.
In what way?
Like an example I can think of is like aliens coming down and trying to imitate what they think is the right way to be.
I don't think that's right.
Well,
So-
but
well, hold on.
the reason
We're-
really quick, the reason why I did think that is because of the medicine, the appearance often caused by hysteria of symptoms of a disease not actually present. So basically mimicking a disease due to your paranoia of something. So that's
I don't think
why
these are all necessarily related. I think that they're just separate terms. So then the next term would be biology, which is mimicry, which is true because we're all simply mimics of our own parents,
Monkey see,
and that goes
monkey
on
do.
forever. And my children are little copies of me,
right. So mimesis in medicine is.
Mimicry, right.
And mimesis in medicine, is the
medicine,
appearance
the
often
appearance-
caused by.
No, I think
hysteria.
the point of this page, you brought up how much you like My Fair Lady. We're going there. Pygmalion. My Fair Lady is a representation of a Greek myth. It was done as a play, but basically, Pygmalion sculpts a woman out of sculpture. She comes to life. They tell that in My Fair Lady as elevating someone else. I think mimesis, in this case, is talking about the bringing into the world of what you put into world gets replicated. I'm not sure that there is another thread that I can put all four of those definitions together under.
I think it's beautiful because in our world, we're so afraid of religion, especially in the Western world, and rightfully so. I mean, come on. We understand the history of religion and its effects on ourselves and so on and so forth. But if you look at it from a more spiritual connection, or maybe even just give it a different term, such as the sensible world, and then you look at the fact that etymology is from the Greek word mimesis, which also, it seems here, mimethai, which I'm not sure, I guess that's also Greek, means to imitate. So I think what they're trying to get here is how do we imitate the divine? How do we imitate what we all know intuitively in our hearts to be right? Not through the ego, but intuitively. And we're not able to understand that unless we're able to understand the sensible world. We have to be open to understanding that in the first place.
I agree. I agree with you up until saying that the sensible world is the divine.
And
I
also,
think that because I just, for some reason, I pick up, and I don't exactly know how to explain it, and so I'm trying to find the words, but I just pick up maybe just a darker thing from this and that. Like just like a falsehood, like a, imitating someone in power who is negative and embodying their views by believing in something, embodying the views of that thing.
And do you think that so what do you, just because I genuinely don't understand, what do you think is a sensible world?
Just sensible world, not insensible, but as in sensibilities, as in what our world is running like now. the way that our world is, not what is good or bad and sensible, but our sensibilities and the way that our culture runs currently is what I think
Okay.
the sensible world
let's give you
is.
Okay.
even more time to think about what the
Yeah, no, I got it out just now.
No, I get it. I get it now. I get what you're saying.
Okay.
Miguel?
You know, in this one, for once, I'm going to agree a lot with you.
Oh Lord.
Wow,
Be happy about
that
it. Be
was
happy about it.
condescending.
Yeah, right.
no,
I
no.
thought she'd be happy.
Yeah,
She's
yeah, I
like
know, I
some
know.
Y'all been
sensible
so
guy.
I don't want to be your
condescending. Like, y'all
associate
been
with
so
you.
condescending.
Okay.
You know I was kidding, right?
It seems to me.
No, I don't.
Does everybody think I was
seems to-
serious? Come on.
It seems to me that this second page, which is mostly just a definition of what this word means, is somehow to be applied in what was said in the first paragraph in the first page, because the essence of this word, mimesis, or however wherever you want to put the
Yeah, I've
accent
never
there.
heard this word in my whole life.
I believe it's a mimesis, but it seems to me that it's suggesting that in an imperfect world, in an unjust world, where we have no idea what perfection actually looks like, where we have no idea what a perfect government or a utopia ever even looks like, we've never ever come to to experience anything like it. Somehow we grab from the divine to try to apply this to our world. Where do we get our idea of justice in a world where we've never actually experienced it ourselves? It seems like we are, in fact, making or trying to achieve this mimesis ourselves through our justice system, through our politics. We are trying to grab from something that we've never experienced. We're trying to create this perfect world that we have no example of clearly.
So
That's what it seems to me.
yeah, and I tend to agree. And what came up for me is it's subjective replication. It's this concept of, in each case, if we're going to use divine interchangeably for sensible, we all, I feel like the majority of people have some sort of a spirituality or a connection to something greater than ourselves, one way or the other. But our interpretation is always going to be subjective, and humans, like growing behavior of children in biology, there is children replicate. They watch and they don't even understand why they're doing it, but they saw someone else do it, so they do it. And you kind of follow different people throughout, and that happens, a million times throughout your life, and that creates your subjective point of view. And the replication is what informs your subjectivity.
I think now that I'm reading through this entire thing, I think that what you were saying makes more sense, because the sensible world isn't, I would almost kind of say the tangible world, the physical world, instead of the sensible world.
Yeah.
And if we use physical world instead, and then we go to this paragraph a little bit further down, and then there's the myth of Pygmalion and Galatea, sorry for saying that, an account of something far kinkier
Of course, Dr.
than
Slater used
misperception.
kinkier.
A work of art not merely resembling a human being, but actually coming to life, the ultimate sculpture.
Taking
And then
someone's, go ahead.
therein
Don't let me
lies
watch
the
talk
danger of a dictator or a president ruling a country. Because even if it's a joke, even if we draw cartoons,
Right.
even if we sit around and use the words that this person uses, so on and so forth, we are the mimeses of this person. So what if, instead of arguing and bitching about how much we hate Trump, instead of all the news articles being about Trump,
Not allowed to use
why
it.
don't we
I
talk
told
about...
you not to say
Oh.
his word.
Look what you did.
You lose.
Oh, it's a great day! It's a great day!
I love this.
These are the rules. In this world, you break a law.
Justice at last.
You must wear this mask. You cannot speak any longer in this class, Miss Jones.
All right, good luck, y'all.
Oh, I'm gonna miss her.
Woo!
I'm gonna miss you, girl.
Justice has been served.
I'm gonna
Oh,
Man.
God, looking good.
So I am slightly
Professor,
claustrophobic,
Hey.
We okay. All right.
but I'll try to breathe and practice my yoga
Okay.
breathing here.
Oh Lord, I'm gonna miss you.
All right.
So was that just?
Fuck.
Should we talk about justice again? Because
Well,
that's,
I mean,
She was warned.
yeah.
I
yeah,
mean, I think
you
we
break
were
the law.
all.
You break the rule. You know. The hard part is, in general, we tend to know the consequences. In this case, we didn't.
Oh, that's rude. Put those down.
Oh.
It's not even
That's
In her defense, it was almost
Yeah,
given.
it's
I mean,
baited.
it
Yeah,
says
that's a
there.
little unfair, Slater. It,
It
says
was-
it right on the piece
It was.
of paper.
She was gonna go into it,
That
but,
was a
but it's
trap.
okay.
That's
But
totally
it was a
fine. I
trap.
think we all sensed that at first because when she
Yeah,
first read the
I
sentence,
saw
she
it
was
and
like,
I was
no,
just
no,
like,
no,
I'm
no.
gonna say it.
of skip over the word.
So, all right. For her sake, can we all
Yeah.
agree that it would be just if we moved on to the next question?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That was a dirty trick, Slater.
oh my God.
That's almost like a perjury trap.
Okay, diegesis. The telling of a story by a narrator who summarizes events in the plot and comments on the conversations, thoughts, etc. of the characters. The sphere or world in which these narrated events and other elements occur. And I'm just going to keep going because we didn't seem to read the last part last time. Diegesis and mimesis have been contrasted since Plato's and Aristotle's times. Mimesis shows rather than tells by means of action that is enacted. Diegesis is the telling of a story by a narrator. The narrator may speak as a particular character or may be the invisible narrator or even the all-knowing narrator who speaks from outside in the form of commenting on the action or the characters. Pure diegesis and parody are two narrative modes employed in Ulysses.
Where's the question? I'm sorry.
Just to talk about it.
Just to talk about it. Honestly.
I mean, you could really compare this to the last.
Diegeses, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, one is words versus actions. This is the first thing I see.
Yeah. Showing versus telling.
Conversation. Oh, I would say that this very much applies to the news circuit and the talking heads that we were talking about. I think that this definitely is like news.
Seeing something happen and make an opinion on your own
Yeah.
versus being told something.
All of the speculating that you hear on the news, I think that this kind of is like that. The sphere or world in which these narrators.
You're doing good. You don't need air right now. There's,
Goodness.
there's this concept of
You about to be rude?
No. I'm sticking up for someone here. What
Okay.
happens sometimes? There's this idea that punishment can either be cruel or unusual. Should we have a chance as form of democracy here and overthrow the powers that be? Who thinks she should be allowed to take it off?
Yeah.
I think
All
it's
right.
unusual, but I don't think it's
You
cruel.
know, I think it's not cruel. I think
If
the
she's
rules
having
were
trouble
set.
breathing, if she's
Yeah.
having
Yeah, yeah,
trouble
yeah.
breathing,
but I
Well,
don't.
even if
I-
you
I-
talk about
disagree
half of it
because
if you
I don't
can't
believe,
breathe.
I don't believe that you should be punished without the rules, but having no understanding of the punishment.
Yeah, if
I
she knew
think-
there were consequences.
I just think it's
He just
cruel
said
if she
avoid.
can't breathe.
Yeah.
No,
I
just
was
like
gonna
lift
say
it,
just-
just lift it
oh.
ever so often.
Okay.
But that's
Well-
just me. You guys can do whatever you want.
All
I mean,
Alright, well, it seems the majority is keep it on. So.
I'm down.
I think the fundamental debate is how do you decide who you want to be based on what you see people doing or what you hear people saying? Which do you put more stock in? Which do you put more faith in? Which do you think is better for the world you live in?
Well, it's interesting the last part here about Ulysses. It makes me think of the Trojan horse, and how that's a story that is.
I think they're talking the other Ulysses, just
Oh,
That's
okay.
Grant.
as in the first narrative employment of the word fuck.
Oh, that's a fun.
I didn't know that. That's
I
a
learned
good.
something today.
Hey, yeah, right.
Yeah, literature ain't into joy.
I learned something in Dr. Slater's class.
I don't. Is there like a question here?
No.
I don't know.
This one,
Like I don't know what to do
I just
about
think-
that.
I
I
tried
see-
to give us a question because I didn't see
I
one.
Yeah.
see-
You know,
I
we
see
had
this as-
something we were talking.
I see this as kind of dark too. I see both of them as negative things. I see mimesis and diegesis as negative things. I see that. I mean, the telling of a story by a narrator, like that's like any way positive or negative. But I just think in the state of this world, both of those things are negative right now. Does that make sense? What I'm saying? I mean, y'all wouldn't agree with me because y'all are for.
Do we,
but
do we believe that in this country we have people who clearly represent either one of these terms? Because in one of them, you know,
I mean, mimesis
Mim-
might be
mim-
Saturday Night Live.
Mimesis. Yeah, it could be.
I think
Yeah, I
that
mean, it could be-
diegesis is
Yeah.
Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
No,
yes.
they're
mimicry
showing.
is-
They're showing.
No,
Mimicry is showing.
People
They're
who
showing
are
and narrating.
They're telling a story.
mimesis could
By a
be
narrator. So that would be like the outside person that's
Mimesis is
narrating
the
them.
embodiment of something. Diegesis is the telling of something. So Saturday
when
Night
they
Live
dress
is the
up as-
opposite of mimesis.
How?
Well,
so if I
in
dress up
rhetoric-
as like you know,
Because you're not
Sessions-
really being that though. If you dress up as Sessions and pretend to be Sessions, that's diegesis. If you
How?
if
That's
you
not
if you
also
let
narrative.
if
Well,
you hold on, hold
Let her
on.
get her-
If you embody the values of Sessions, that's mimesis. But if you pretend to be Sessions, you're a parody of Sessions. And so then you're diegesis because you're telling of him versus embodying his values and becoming him.
Yeah, can I
Imitation,
can I say,
representation.
It says the word imitate under the definition, imitation or representation, and I get that it's embodiment as well, but I think
Imitation, representation by art. I think they've got
Yeah, that-
crossover. I
there
think
is,
you're right
yeah.
that
Yeah.
they're both.
You're
I
yeah.
would agree with
think
Miguel.
you're right.
I would agree that
So I think that if
he's
it's
been
someone
raising his
who-
hand.
if
Let
I'm-
him address his
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
He's
Go
been
ahead.
raising
You're
his
right.
hand.
Sorry.
No, I think we should stay on topic and go with what you're going to say.
So-
'Cause I'm sure he's going to derail the
I will
topic.
let him. Do you mind if I just touch on what she said? Is that all right?
I'll keep my hand.
So I think there can be
You're
both.
starting to look like
So
Drew.
in the case of someone dressing up as Sessions,
Yes.
I think that would be the mimesis. But if we're talking about a commentary, like say for example the Weekend Update,
Okay, yeah.
talking about it, that would be the diegesis.
So Saturday Night
you're
Live
right.
is both.
I
She's
am
right.
I'm going to disagree with you. And I'm
Well, then
going
you're
to-
wrong.
We all think we're
We
right.
solved the world's problems. Let's call it a day.
And this, I'm going to agree with her on this because I think we can see a more drastic example of this. When we have people who support our current administration and who not only talk with pride about our current administration, but embody the values that our current administration have. When we see people at rallies, like in South Carolina, when we saw, these riots of people supporting, then we can see a clear example of mimesis.
That counts.
Oh,
anyway. I knew it.
Judges
You-
call
you-
administration is part of Trump, so you get to get
God.
Trump as well.
No, see, no, I disagree with you. on
It's
that
good
word,
for you.
Mas.
It's not your pass.
Oh, really?
Yes, really.
I
That
know
was
it's not my class.
technicality.
Judges. I
Wow.
have judges
Okay.
involved.
Hold
Thank you.
on, I think I see where this is going.
Yeah,
It's less mimesis and more mitosis.
I have a feeling
I
we're all
don't.
gonna be-
Wait. At the beginning, did he say that if
Ew,
we mention
it's
anything
just
about?
so ugly.
He didn't, but I'm going to just accept it.
I would say I feel this is
You're willing
less
to accept
just.
your punishment without understanding. Yeah, I would agree. I would
What?
say that
Yeah,
your
we gotta get another-
punishment was not as just.
Although he was agreeing with
I get, like,
me
a
as
post,
it
like
happened, I agree with it
Wait,
because
no, hold
they
on.
said not to talk.
Well, she did mention
I thought they said
Sessions,
not to
and
talk
Sessions is
about-
part of the government. That's
Oh! Say
About
the
the-
T word.
Oh,
Can I see
Whoa.
You must keep it on. You must keep this on.
I don't think they took it off.
I got you.
Yeah.
Handsome, you look handsome.
Oh,
All
it's
of
a
you, you
great
look
day.
great,
Oh.
all three of you.
Ooh.
La, la, la,
I mean, in the picture, there's three people.
I know the best words.
And Aaron's in here.
You're silenced now. That's come with your face. All right. So you were saying.
Mr. Delgato.
I don't remember.
You just don't know how to follow the rules. Get out of my class.
What? Did
Get
he
out of my
take it
class.
off? Did he
Took
take
it
it
off.
off?
He spoke.
You gotta use
No,
both
no,
fingers
no,
there.
no.
You gotta have both of them.
No,
do it. Hold on.
no,
Give me a
no.
quick. Yeah.
Oh God, you guys like that way too much.
Well, it's just so fitting. You know?
I'm sorry. Something came over me.
Hey, goodbye.
Yeah.
All right. We're twiddling.
This is really intense.
So
I have a theory
Yes.
Yeah.
that by the end of this conversation, we're all gonna have masks on because a lot of issues revolve around.
Someone in particular.
You know what? Wait.
I
I
know.
don't know.
I'm testing the boundaries of justice right now. Let's see how it goes.
I would like to
So,
silence.
wait, hold on. This kind of is interesting because you know,
Yeah.
I feel like this is kind
Everybody
of what's
has
happening
something
in our society right now, where
Wait,
one
it
group
is, yes.
one group gets persecuted for whatever reason, whether you know it's fully just or not. The next group gets persecuted, whether it's fully just or not. Pretty soon, there's going to be no one to stick up for the people that are getting persecuted.
An eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind.
Yeah.
Wow.
And also,
And justice
this,
is blind. Oh God, we're in trouble.
Right?
Oh no.
and then also, this is kind of mimesis in itself. But I can't explain why without getting a mask put
Oh
on.
yeah, right. Oh man.
Look what they've done now.
Handcuffed.
Okay, how do we feel about diegesis? Are we still?
I mean, it's easier if you have yogurt in the morning.
Do you think we've like Activia?
Maybe some fiber.
Okay. Do we feel like we get this? Do we feel like we have more to say about it?
I've got.
What?
No.
Yeah, I think.
That?
Yeah, I
Everything,
think.
and we have a.
I mean, okay, this, okay. What, okay, I do have, though, we kind of really covered the first part, the telling of a story, but the sphere or world in which these narrated events and other elements occur. What exactly does that mean? In relation
Stories
to
can only be
diegesis.
told in the place they live in. Like Great Gatsby,
Okay.
that was only going to be told by F. Scott Fitzgerald based on the time and place he lived in.
So that
Yeah.
number
Okay.
one there is pertaining to the stories don't happen in a vacuum. They have to have
Context,
some sort of
Context.
that is the initial inspiration.
cultural context in one way or another.
I don't think anyone's
Yeah.
gonna argue against that.
No.
No.
Am I the only one who kind of wants a mask now?
There's
That's
the
why.
easy way to get one.
I mean, there is an
easy
easy
way to
way.
get
I
one.
think he wants the mask, but he doesn't
So
want to
who'd
be
you vote
silenced.
for?
So.
Yeah, I know. It's not fair.
Hey, we can whip a comb out.
Hey.
Oh,
no.
am I gonna get one now?
Ew.
What do you think?
Oh my god. Okay.
Wait.
Well, stop being such a baby.
Ah!
You bite your thumb at me, sir?
Oh.
You bite your thumb at me, sir.
Okay. So does anybody actually
with your
understand the
mouth shut, you're
historical
a smart
context
ass.
of "I bite your thumb"?
Yeah.
I've never under what is this a
Are you talking about from
like-
Shakespeare?
Yeah.
Do you know what? Do you know what it means? Do you know why them's fighting words?
Doesn't it just mean like fuck you, pretty much?
No.
They used to
It
cut off
means
fingers.
no. It means I'm removing your girlfriend's pubic hair from my front teeth.
Oh my god.
Do you bite your thumb at me, sir? That's why that play starts with a fight.
Are
For
you
anybody who's
sure?
confused, 100% certain.
How the?
Shakespeare
He
was a
seems
dirty
to be
fuck.
good with this literature. I don't know how.
I'm not gonna
He
disagree.
makes a point about Shakespeare.
Okay, Much Ado About Nothing? What do you think nothing is in the title? It was a commonplace nickname at the time for your lady bits.
I'm not arguing with you about Shakespeare terminology. You're full of-
I'm just...
No, but it's interesting because that fits into this here.
True.
You know, time and place. I
Time
mean,
and
it's
place.
amazing how that shapes our context.
Yeah. Great point.
Mimesis shows rather than tells, by means of action that is enacted.
Yeah,
Diegesis
so
is
that would
the
be
telling.
like showing. Yeah.
How
Yeah.
many things can qualify as only one and not both?
Well, I think they're kind of. I mean, they're. Yeah, I would say they're separate because you're
Yeah.
either replicating
I have a
or
question.
you're talking about.
What about a song?
Well, a song you wouldn't be showing, I wouldn't think.
No, but it's
You're only
it is
talking about-
representative aspects in literature and art. an art can be considered music.
I
Or do
wouldn't-
they
I-
mean
I-
physical
I
art,
couldn't
like
imagine.
painting?
I like because of the context of it being narration versus imitation. I couldn't picture. I mean, visually I can see how, but verbally
Narration
I don't
versus
know.
imitation. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it'd be hard to verbally.
She's figured out the hole in the strategy.
Krista, get out of my class.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be on one side, is it?
So is there like a certain amount of A's that are left at the end, and then we get to
Another
collect
one
them?
but deduction.
This isn't a
Wow.
needed
Wow.
deduction.
Allocation of
Another one
resources.
but
Continue. You know, I can't believe that someone of your stature has the mentality that you do.
What?
You're
You're a tall man. Wait,
Look at that.
hold on.
Apparently, because
You wanna
I
sit by
am 6
you?
foot 1 and 140 pounds.
He means your opinions,
That's weird. That
not your physical stature.
Okay. I'm
I
still.
assume you knew that,
Dr.
you're
Slater,
being
I'm still a little
smart
confused
ass.
as to what you meant because I am.
I know it was derogatory, and I don't know much.
You know,
else.
I came here to learn, and to be honest, I don't know a lot about what's on this piece of paper, so I'm trying to do more listening than yapping and moderating. So I don't know. I don't know if I've expressed an opinion.
Okay, so your views that you've expressed in class seem to differ from the way you are today, I suppose, is what he's saying.
I mean,
Discuss.
well, I'm about to get my mask put on me. I think if I go down this road, let's see how careful I can be. I'm not on one side. I'm an independent. In 2012 and 2008, I voted for Obama. I have.
What?
There's a lot of us in the Midwest who did that. Yeah.
What?
I guess you could say on a lot of issues I've evolved, and I felt like the candidate that I voted, the candidate that
that guy.
I suppose I'd say that my opinions after seeing Obama's administration come to a completion started to change because I didn't think that what Obama promised was ever delivered. So I was opening my mind to ideas that were different than the ones that I had held before. Though at my core, there are some things I believe that, like, you know, women can do whatever they want. The idea of being pro-abortion is kind of a libertarian tenet. People could do whatever they want. That would be the most liberal stance I've taken in this class, I think. But it's not inconsistent with my libertarian ideology,
Okay. You're just less of a dick today, is all.
I guess. I have more to learn.
I'm not sure whether that's a compliment or an insult.
Yeah, I'm trying to take it as a
Less.
compliment.
Less of a dick,
Believe they call
less
that
of a dick, or less of a
backhanded
dick?
compliment?
Less of a dick, or less of a dick?
I'm gonna give her the benefit of the doubt.
I'd give him the
God,
good
you-
less of a dick, and I'd give you the bad less of a dick.
All right, we're all PhD, we're all higher level education.
PhD, yeah. Pretty.
Hold on. All right.
I'm learning all sorts of fun new terms today.
All right, I guess let's move on.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, wait.
moving on.
Did we solve all the world's problems?
I think so.
I think we did.
See you at graduation.
We need
We
more
threw the
props.
Trump masks. That's what. Oh.
Oh my God, no! Wait.
Yeah, you did.
You want
Hey,
fair?
wait, we could beat the system. I thought of something. We could beat the system. They won't have a conversation if on 3 we all say 1, 2, 3.
Drum!
You fell for it.
Oh, son of a. Well, apparently there are no consequences.
Right? Look at that. You set me up, huh?
I was just curious to see. It's like, all right, well, I'll jump in another pool on 3.
We need 2 more masks for sure.
All right. Well, here comes my justice.
One for you.
I didn't say anything.
Oh.
I tricked them.
He did.
I didn't say
Yeah. No, neither of them said anything. They set us up.
You fell for it.
Yeah.
So,
As a libertarian, I can do whatever I want.
Whoa!
Okay. Whoa. This is the first time I've ever been able to talk by myself. Okay. Here we go. You know what I'd like to discuss since there's no one to interrupt me? Let's see. The fact that I am the only black person in the room, and on every subject that we've talked about that had to do with black people, nobody listened to me. No one. And no one had any time to listen to what I had to say. Even you interrupted me to give your own personal bias on the situation, even if it was good. Even if it was good. But I would just like to point out that everyone in this room, on every subject that we had about black people, never let me talk. And I've got a lot to say about that and a lot of experience. You agreed with me, but you didn't let me talk. You were on my side, but you didn't let me talk. You're just going to say yes. Okay. Thank you. The floor is mine. I mean, now there's nothing to talk about now. And now I can talk.
See you at graduation,
2,
yo.
1, bye. I talk over you too. Yeah, of course. But about what? Like Canadians? What? Huh? Keep talking to me like that because it's fun. I guess that's it. I mean, I would be the only person to not say it. Dr. Slater? Dr. Slater?
Miss Coleman,
Yes.
I find it fascinating that the floor is completely yours.
Yes.
What else would you like to talk about?
I don't have anything else to talk about.
Anything. I love what you shared
Anything.
already. Women's rights. Anything.
Yes, okay. Women's rights. That's disgusting. Okay. Women's rights.
Surprises no one that you don't have anything else to say.
You know what's funny? It surprises me that you would walk out on that part of the conversation. As sexist as you are, that makes a lot of sense. Bye. It's just me and you.
My brother.
But see, you've been my okay. Women's rights. Feminism. I'm a strong feminist, I would say. And I believe in feminism, no matter what wave it is. And I believe that right now we have a huge problem because even when men are thinking that they're being nice and doing good by women, they're still not acknowledging the way that we feel or the very things that we could have a problem with in their behavior or the way that they talk to us. And I think that that's a really huge thing. And I think that a lot of the times when I run into something sexist, it's by accident, just like a microaggression. And I feel like the problem is that they don't acknowledge, men don't acknowledge that there could be a problem with what they're saying, and that level of sexism is still over it by thinking that they're always correct about something that would have to do with a woman, which I think we all have a lot of problem with. Just how in class no one listened to me when it was a subject about something that only I could truly know about. It's the same thing. People, even in trying to defend someone's rights, can step on them by not realizing that they may not have the knowledge that someone else has about the subject. And I feel like I've run out of words. Oh wait, this feels weird because of your mask. Because of your mask. It felt good and weird at the same time. I wish you didn't just go back and sit and stare at me. I just really... I like that you're really going to stick this out, though, and stay after everyone's left. I heard a Siri. Ooh, I know what I could talk about. I could talk about the way that I see mimesis and diegesis, because I feel like not everybody agreed with me. And I think mimesis and diegesis are very dark concepts. And I think that we have a lot of people in this world imitating because they don't have the presence of mind to have their own thoughts and opinions. And so they're just taking in what they receive from the outside world. And the way the world is now, that's a dangerous thing, I think. The world has always been dangerous, though. And diegesis, I would say, is also a dark concept in relation to mimesis.
Miss Coleman, you have passed the test.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, before we finalize, I would like to go from Mr. Parker on out. Please tell me how President Donald Trump has affected your life in 3 minutes or less.
I'll probably be on the or less side of this. I think that he's had more of impact on my personal life than he has had on the world that I encompass. Like, you know, I voted for him. I'm a fan of some of the things he says and some of the things he does, and I criticize him when I disagree with him. I think he's a little bit more or less another business as usual president. I know that I'm alone in thinking that largely. I know that most people are rolling their eyes at me, but I think that people forget he's not a king. He's not just gonna, I think this, so this. There's a process of checks and balances that prohibit him from doing whatever the hell he wants. There are some policies that he's enacted that I'm proud of, that I think was a good call. But there are some policies I think is embarrassing. He's not a deity. But it's infected my personal life more because, you know, it's sometimes living in Denver and being a Donald Trump supporter, sometimes you kind of have to be in the closet about that. You can't tell people, you know, friends look at you differently, friends can't just find the common ground that this is, you know, what, we love each other, this is one thing we disagree on, so it's over. It's kind of made me feel like people aren't as open-minded as they pretend to be. And it's a disappointment because I do think that we have a lot more in common than we do having separate us.
Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Personally, how has he personally affected your life? Just a minute and a half.
Okay. How about a minute and a half of telling me how President Trump has personally affected your life?
Oh, just going home for Thanksgiving. It's such a pain in the ass. The election was over for 2 or 3 weeks, but everyone's always, we're family, you're my aunt, you're my grandma, you're my uncle, you're my brother, but we're just, let's try and just enjoy a nice Thanksgiving meal. Well, we can't if you're a supporter of this or that or her, him, and whatever. It's just, give me a fucking break, people, you know? If you're only having conversations that people that agree with you, if you can't just get past small differences, you're never going to accomplish anything.
Right. Ms. Coleman, how has President Trump personally affected your life?
Negatively. Him being elected was very difficult for me, mostly because of my parents, because especially my father lived through a really tough time in the South as a black man. And to deal with that and deal with the civil rights movement and deal with all of that, and then to have somebody come into power who is clearly a racist and clearly has those opinions. It was really hard to watch him watch that, because we should be further than that by now, and we aren't, clearly. And it's difficult because it did drive a wedge between a lot of the people that I thought were different than they are and believed in different things. And the main argument is always, well, we love each other, or we are friends, or we are family, and we should be able to disagree on this and still be close. But in my opinion, if you voted for him, then you have an acceptance and you are okay with the things that he believes in. And the things that he believes in are directly against me as a human being, as a woman, and as a black woman. Donald Trump is not for me. He does not like me. He does not care about me. And if you voted for him, then in turn, although it may seem extreme, I feel as though you don't care about me and you're not for me and you're against me. And so it definitely drove a wedge between a lot of people, and it was kind of sad to lose certain people. And it definitely affected me negatively. I've seen more hate, received more hate. And it's definitely the only way it's affected me in the positive, that it's opened my eyes to a lot of different things that I wasn't looking at before. And I feel like I did go through a sort of awakening after that, to realize what was going on in the world around me and realize that things may be different than they seem.
Thank you for sharing. Mr. Cope, how has President Trump affected your life? Personally.
So some of these might not seem personal, but it will get to there. So to start out, the freeze of government salaries. My brother is a government employee, and that really affects his ability to meet up with the family and spend time together, because his ability to pay for tickets is dependent upon, his rent goes up. All of his expenses go up every year. And so, with his salary frozen, the thing that gets cut is that leisure time. And so he still has to put food in the fridge and everything like that. So it limits my ability to spend time with my family. Next would be relatives of mine that are still in other countries, and the reduction of immigrant visas and people being given green cards. And that affects my ability, again, to spend time with family. And to me, family is really important. The next is the tax break, which added almost $1 trillion of debt and increased inflation by about 2%. And that inflation devalues my money every day. So I may have X amount of dollars now, but it's going to be worth less every year. And the more that inflation goes up, the more that value of my money goes down. And so again, same thing with my brother. Not only does he not have a salary increasing, but he's also got the inflation to take away from the money he already has. On a very personal level, I've seen a big rise in anti-Semitism. I've seen swastikas painted up places. And that really affects me, because I've had family that did pass away in the war under Nazi control. And in terms of the cost for me when I go out, I've had things that I've tried to buy that they said, I ask, why did the price go up? And they say, well, the tariff caused our cost to go up, and we don't have an option other than to pass it on to the customer. And so then again, my cost goes up, my money value goes down, and I'm stuck in that position, and really there's nothing I can do about that on a personal level to it's such a high level that affects me personally. And the bandwagon type thing where I'm kind of realizing some of my friends, and I don't know, I almost say this might be a good thing, but realizing that some of my friends may be racist.
Your passion is well stated. Ms. Baker, your personal effect caused by President Trump.
I think President Trump has negatively impacted the lives of many people in countless ways, and I'm going to name 3 ways specifically for myself. The first of which is that my best friend is a resident of one of the Muslim countries that is listed under the travel ban. So that then affects my ability to see my best friend. The second way is that I am a member of the LGBT community, and he not only supports laws and policies acting directly against this community, but has taken his support away from policies put in place to protect equality and rights for people of the LGBT community. The third way is as a woman and a victim of sexual assault. In not only him permitting people to serve in his cabinet and permitting the vulgar and disgraceful generalization of how commonplace it is to talk about sexual assault and demean women, and in hearing those words spoken by a president, it makes it okay for everybody else to say it too. And the fact that there are not repercussions for not only his own actions and words spoken against women and victims of sexual assault, it's the fact that everything that he does and everything that he supports, the people that look at him and see him as the president then think that's okay. And I am not okay with that.
Thank you so much for sharing. Ms. Jones, it's your turn. How has President Trump affected your life personally?
Well, socially, I'm always kind of afraid to support Trump because I just don't feel like it's acceptable. But my life has not changed in the slightest bit since Trump has become president. I know our employment rate is at the lowest it's been since the 60s. I know different foreign leaders have thanked or noticed Trump for bringing North Korea and South Korea together or helping support that collaboration between these two countries, which is a really, really big deal. A lot of the things that he promotes, I actually understand the logic behind it. I don't like the man himself. I wouldn't want to have a beer with the guy or anything like that. And I don't think he's the first president who's ever, cheated on his wife or even paid for those services. I think it would be ridiculous to assume he was the only president who did those things. And honestly, I have no respect for the news services anymore. That's one thing that's affected me personally is every time I check news, it's the next gossip about Trump, which is annoying, so I don't even bother with it anymore. And I just feel like we're 2 years in, we got 2 years to go, this is all gonna pass away and it'll be fine and we'll move on.
Very good, thank you. Right. Mr. Delgado, your turn. How has President Trump affected your life personally?
Well, he has created a divide amongst the people I know, amongst the people I love. I love people from both sides of the aisle. I've grown up with people from both sides of the aisle, and it's sad to see such a divide for me. It's sad to see a religious organization that I love, that I still love so much, to be used for political wars. And that's the part that affects me the most, to see politicians, especially him, use the core values of this organization, this religious movement that has been around for thousands of years, and to use it for his own agenda. Him not being the slightest bit of the representation of those core values whatsoever. In other ways that personally it has affected me, you know, his rhetoric, the way that he has expressed himself has empowered many people who are not just aggressive about racism, but are just people who should simply not have a microphone to speak, and has empowered them and has made it okay for them to say certain things. I have experienced it twice since he has been in office, that for no reason at all I get stopped at the airport. Something that never happened before, and now all of a sudden twice in a row for no reason at all. Inexplicable. And I've seen it happen for more than just me. I mean, multiple people I know in the same situation. It has the other way that it has affected me is that I can't have a reasonable conversation with people anymore because there is a fear and a distrust of what used to be our greatest ally, which was the media, now is somehow portrayed as our greatest foe. And that's not okay. Unfortunately, we can't have any decent conversations with anybody because there's nothing to believe. There's no truth anymore. And that affects me deeply.
Thank you for sharing. Mr. H.
Well, my life has been deeply personally impacted by Trump. A lot of my classmates have brought up what they feel is a growing racial divide in this country, and my personal opinion was that was already there. That these things that everybody are saying are much worse, that's not necessarily true. As regards his beliefs on national security, the border, and how we are supposed to behave when negotiating with other countries and representing our own interests, he absolutely stands in line with the American ideal. But it's more than that. Talking about the racial tension in America, there is something that is quite simply true. There is one group of people who's being asked to give up more than everybody else. And somehow we're just supposed to take that on the chin. So a man comes forward and says, no, you don't have to take that. Of course, everybody or a great number of people feel comforted, feel safer. I know that I sleep more soundly, knowing that I have a president who is looking after the interests of people who look and think like me. Seek Trump.
And with that, I would like to thank you for being here once again, seeing how the effect hits our core. You are dismissed.